This is the month of Fools, as we've said on the show last week, is that we're doing contradictions in the Bible. And tonight's contradiction is the one sign, no sign, or many signs. Yeah, well, apparently the Bible doesn't even know how many signs that he's supposed to give. Now, we were going over this during our weekly staff meeting. This contradiction is a little confusing. Now, it says here, at one point, the Pharisees come to Jesus and ask him for a sign. Maybe he was, handing out the sign that says, free pot. No.
He gave them a sign that said, "Eat at Joe's," and the damn Pharisees never even showed up.
Yeah, no, yeah.
Here all night.
And apparently in Mark 8:12, Jesus says that it should be no sign should be given unto this generation. And maybe he's trying to do a Pepsi commercial with Michael Jackson on that one. Or in the contradiction in Mark, in Matthew 12:39, Jesus says the only sign to be given would be the sign of Jonah. After reading this one, I kind of got a little bit better handle on this. I think this is supposed to be the sign of the resurrection, or the fact that he's the man Christ, or the man God, or whatever the fuck he is. You thought he was. But there was a little screw up there too, because he said that the days of Jonah would represent the days of Christ, since Jonah was supposedly 3 days and nights in the whale, or the big fish, as it were. But Jesus was dead for only 2 days. So they screwed up again. Apparently the Bible just can't get its story straight. But wait, there's yet another one here. There's more in here. It says the contradiction to both Mark and Matthew. The Gospel of John speaks of the sign that Jesus did, that the miracle of two miracles, supposedly the miracle of turning water into wine at the wedding of Cana, which was supposedly called the beginning, or the first sign that Jesus did in John 2:11, or the healing of Capernaum. And the second sign would be John 4:54. So which one is it, guys? Is there no signs given? Which clearly Jesus said there was no signs going to be given. Then they suddenly, oh well, no, we've got this sign. Oh no, we've got this sign and this sign. I don't think they even fucking know what they're talking about. The whole thing is screwed up. We're gonna put the timer on now. So we've got the basic background on this. We've moved our clock. So this way, it's over here now. So this way, it's not.
I'm so confused now.
No, not the evil timer.
Yes, the timer. Yes. So this way, the clock wasn't sitting right behind my head and hitting me in the head every time it counted down. It was giving me brain damage. So all right, let's go start that timer and go ahead and start now. Joe, go ahead.
So let me get this straight, Packard. Are you implying that the Bible has contradictions in it?
Yes.
Oh my God.
You're off the show, aren't you?
Yeah. All right. I always say, it's fun to look up the Bible contradictions on apologist websites, and I found these contradictions being discussed on an apologist website. Mm-hmm. They said that Mark 8:12, Jesus was referring to the Pharisees. The sign is something the Pharisees won't see. While in that passage Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, he does not specify them. He says that there will be this sign, there will be no sign to this generation, which means all the people alive at that moment. At least that's what generation means to me.
Yeah.
And he said it to them with some impatience. Like, he took a deep sigh. He asked why this generation wants a sign, and then he declared that they won't get it. And that's it. The Pharisees turned and went to their house. Jesus got in his boat and went across the lake, and that was it.
I'm out of here, bitches!
Yeah, exactly. It was a very typical moment in Jesus' life. So the resurrection isn't even mentioned in the earliest manuscripts of Mark. Well, they show up at the tomb, and the tomb is open, and it's empty. And they go inside, and there's a boy in there, and he says, Jesus is risen. But then Mark, in the earliest manuscripts, ends at 16:8. 16:9 through 20 is the story of how they interact with Jesus after he is risen. But those aren't found until copies of Mark that come later in history.
Right.
So the fact that Jesus says earlier in the book of Mark that there will be no sign, but then this resurrection story is tacked onto the end of Mark, just is further evidence that Mark was tampered with.
Oh, yeah.
At least the ending, anyway.
Oh, yeah. Either that or it was just added on as an ad hominem, I guess.
Right, to make it kind of match up with the other Gospels that were there.
Right, exactly.
The claim that the claim of no sign contradicts in Matthew 12:39. where he invokes Jonah. And he says, the Son of Man will spend 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth. But this contradicts the story of Easter. Jesus went to the tomb on Friday, spent 2 days, 2 nights sleeping off the flogging, and he popped his head back out on Sunday morning. Woohoo, Easter Sunday. So somebody needs to adjust Easter to Monday from now on.
That's right.
Because it contradicts the what he said in Mark 12:39.
And as we've said on the show, Easter pops around and changes days every year.
Exactly. So now they need to change it to a new day of the week.
Right, exactly.
So the Apologist website had an answer for this.
Anything.
Before we run out of time here, Joe.
Okay.
Let's hear True Surge. True Surge. What are your take on this particular contradiction?
Well, in general, not just to talk about this contradiction, but in general, I think I think a few details we can put on the table that would kind of explain a lot of these problems, like in one fell swoop. For example, that the Gospel of Mark was written before the Gospel of Matthew.
Right.
So if we put that and like what Joe was saying, that 16:9 through 20 didn't exist in the original Gospel of Mark. And, we start laying some of these facts, quite frankly, on the table. I think most, even biblical scholars, most Christian scholars admit that Mark was written before Matthew. So if we can lay some of these out, then it starts becoming clear, like, why these contradictions are there. They obviously, Matthew and John and Luke obviously were not at all concerned about someone getting a copy of Mark and their version and then looking at them side by side. It just wasn't in their minds. Otherwise, they would have covered their tracks.
Yeah.
And only in John do we see a little bit of that track covering, which I talked about in my latest series on YouTube. So that's what interests me. Once you get past just the identification, this is a contradiction. I like to think about, why did this come about, So like in this case, obviously, if Mark was written first, I believe it's Mark, Matthew, John, Luke, by the way. So if Mark was written first, then obviously Matthew is going to try and improve Mark's story.
Right.
This is all a fiction factory, folks.
Yes.
None of this happened. A couple of the people are real. The places are real. The events never happened.
That's right.
So when we put all this on the table, we can go, aha, Matthew had an overarching goal to improve Mark's story. And in fact, over 90% of Mark is included in Matthew's version, almost verbatim. That's not something somebody would do if they really were an eyewitness.
Exactly.
It's an author. It's an editor improving on the previous story. So
yes.
When Matthew reads Mark and goes, no sign is given, in his mind, he's thinking, how can I improve that? Oh, wait, I can equate the Jonah being in the dark place in the belly of the whale, basically dead for all practical purposes. And then Jonah pops out alive, miraculously. So he's making a parallel with that, right? So Matthew is a much more Jewish take on the story. Mark's is more of a Greek Roman kind of thing. So Matthew is actually going back in the Old Testament, which is the Septuagint for him, since he couldn't read Hebrew, or he wouldn't have been reading the Septuagint. So he goes in the Old Testament and he starts trying to fill in these things that he sees he can improve upon Mark, and so we get this evolution, and so we have no sign in Mark, we have the sign of Jonah in Matthew, and then we have all these other miracles in John. And so I see it as sort of trying to one up the previous author. We see extra stories tacked on, like the adulterous story was never part of John. The chapter 21 of John was never part of John. And it just keeps growing and growing. Yeah,
it's just like it's a long fishtail. I'm sorry, but we only had like 15 seconds here. Do you have anything you want to add in real quick?
The entire Bible is a work of fiction, and I just count it in its totality.
There you go. That's a good way to end it.
Honestly, that's how I fucking feel.
I know what it is, and that's our time. Yeah, great points all the way around. The whole Bible.
I have a lot more to say, but I'll shut my mouth.
Okay. No, go ahead. You really didn't get much time to speak on there. Go ahead, Medusa. Did you have the
Well,
last
the
thought?
Jews got their Bible from the Greeks, and if everybody stuck to the Greeks wrote, we wouldn't have all these problems.
Oh, yeah.
But since the Bible, and this will end my commentary, but since the Bible, as I see it, was just a calibration test for the Gutenberg press, and should have just been thrown away as such, because it is a work of fiction.
Right.
You guys are way ahead of me on Bible quoting and all that stuff.
Oh, that's all right.
You're way over my head. But since it is a work of fiction in its totality, I discount it in my totality.
Yeah, I do too, and that's a great point. So if you're out there, Medusa says, throw your Bible away. Go ahead, do it.
Do I have to throw all of them away? I've got a whole shelf of them.
I know you do, Joe.
Yes, Joe, they all have to go.
They all have to go. Throw them all away. Throw them all
I'm
away.
going to throw my back out with all these Bibles.
Just call the Salvation Army. They'll come pick them up.
There you go.
No, don't do that. Translation.
Yeah, don't give them that, because then they'll actually let other people read them. No, I'm just kidding.
They'll go back into circulation.
Right. Actually, if people would fucking read their Bibles, they would see that this is a fucking work of fiction, and you might as well read a copy of Superman. It's the same fucking.
They would notice the contradictions, at least. I always ask believers that on Twitter. I'm like, well, if you've read it, didn't you see that this part didn't match up with that part? And they're like, well, no, it does match. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
Read it.
You know, the reason why is because when they read the Bible, they read it linearly, one book at a time. Or
they just jump around and read the passages they want to read.
Yeah, exactly. That too.